What's going on, everybody? This is Dave from This is Pop Punk Promotions. I'm here with Patrick Sheufelt from IO Detroit Recording Studio. How's it going, Patrick?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I really appreciate you coming on. Let's dive right into it. So, when and how did you start up the recording studio?
Oh, let's see. It was about 4.5 years ago now. Um, I moved back to this side of the state. I was living in West Michigan. Prior to that, I was living out in Colorado, and ended up back here near Detroit. And I hadn't played music in a really long time. I had taken like 5 years out off of like music and art entirely. I was working as a firefighter and EMT in Grand Rapids, and that just ate up all my time. Um, 100-hour weeks, night shifts for 6 months at a time. It was gnarly, and I finally kind of had enough of that after 5 years, and took a different job opportunity. Moved back here, where I'm from. I'm from Algonac, Michigan originally, and then I was like, you know what, I got to start playing music again. This is like I've had too long of a break. I miss it. Um, got a band started up, and then was like, man, I'm really interested in recording, and like I want to do this record with this band. I had a record that I wrote, and we were playing it, and it's like, how are we gonna record this? Let's just do it ourselves, fuck it, like let's just start it. And then it kind of snowballed really quickly. It was like we got the studio, and we immediately, almost like as soon as we started putting in an interface and like collecting some microphones, and like my brother had a bunch of old recording gear, so we sifted through that, figured out it was broken, like started putting a studio loosely together. And I mean, very loose. I say studio, it was not good back then. But then like immediately we stumbled on a storage unit that was for sale, and bought it for 150 bucks. And it was a music store had purchased the storage unit because they knew there was some stuff in it, but they did a terrible job of picking through it, and they left us with like thousands of dollars worth of stuff that they just weren't able to identify, like a bunch of cool old vintage gear that they just didn't know what it was and what it was worth. And I bought it blind, didn't see anything, and then it was like 150 bucks, and we're like, okay, well, maybe we win, maybe we lose. And it turned out we won pretty substantially. And um and then yeah, we just used that to sort of like get started. And then from there, was like 500 Craigslist trades later, we've got a pretty different decent gear collection. And then since then, I've basically made it my prerogative to just like scour the earth for like the best interesting vintage stuff that I can get, within my budget. And yeah, it's basically I'm just constantly kind of upgrading stuff, and picking out new gear. And I'm like, I'll go a long way to get it. Like I went down to Nashville to get my console, which I can show you here. Flip the camera around, if that's okay. So this is the front end of the studio. It's a 1989 soundtracks. It was made in England. And then over here, some of the other front end, it's like custom made stuff that was like from just after the Motown era. So like really, really high quality stuff that you just don't find unless you get really lucky, and it keeps happening to us. So I'm very grateful for that.
That's really awesome. So, when it comes to recording bands, like, what's your process?
Typically here, I mean, I've tried to tool this studio so that it's like extremely versatile. Like I do not, one thing that I never want to be is a one trick pony. So like tonight I've got like some 70s Steely Dan type stuff in here, but like last week it's a metal band, next week it's a metal band. So it it just depends. It's like if we're doing like the Steely Dan kind of stuff, or like folk indie, sometimes I'll go live. I have the ability to record straight to tape, which is fun for singer songwriters. But for punk, metal, any of this stuff, pop punk, it's all rigid, multi-track to a click. Kind of like pseudo LA style, where we try to be really clean. We got 18 channels in, 8 out here, so pretty much sky's the limit. I'm not putting 30 microphones on a drum kit, but we don't have space to set up 30 mic stands. So, we're working with like 14, 15 microphones on a drum kit is typical. Get nice room sound. And the core of my process is just getting it right at the source. And that's like maybe to anybody that's an engineer that's watching, like, oh yeah, everybody says that it's old hat, but it's like, no, you really got to do that. Like we spend hours here tuning drums. Like we really don't screw around with drum tuning. Like it's very rigorous. And if I hear like, the slightest buzz or rattle, or if I just don't like it, like I'm gonna go back and fix it. And I tell artists that. I tell them that on the front end. I say, when you come in here, don't rush. Don't expect to rush. I don't rush. It's not how we do things here. I charge my rates are by the day, not by the hour, because I don't ever want anyone watching the clock. And it's like, if a session's really cooking along and we go a little over time, I don't care. I just want the best records possible to come out of here. And like, you want to walk over to the live room? Like, I'll show you. We're set up for Steely Dan time right now. Hopefully, Walter Becker would be proud. But you can see, like, we do a lot of extreme stuff with the muting. Like these were all added like incrementally because we just weren't happy with the sound. This I still have to finish muting the snare drum. It's not quite right, but like, really dead, this kind of thing. So, that's just like a small look into like the process of miking and recording a drum kit, which to me is the foundation of everything. Because if the kit isn't good, the drum sound isn't good, the whole record is toast right off the get-go. So that's where I put a lot of time and effort in, is especially to the drums, because I like to, like, I use drum samples. I'm not one of these guys that's like, oh, drum samples are evil, never use them. Of course I'll use them, but I try to get as far as I possibly can before we have to. And like on this project tonight, we will not be using drum samples on this mix. We haven't used them on anything in this project, so it's like depends on the project. But yeah, that's about it. It's just a lot of, it's why I have all this equipment, is so I can dial the sound in on the front end, not try to fix it in the mix. And that helps out, not only because it's just a better sound on the way in and there's more you can do with it later, but because if you have something that's coming in as sort of a rough mix almost, because it sounds that good already, then everybody that plays after is going to play better because it already sounds good, and they're playing along with something that already sounds good, not some nasty sounding like half mixed, where it's jumbly and it's all, tinny or something. They can't hear the drums very well. So, you know what I mean? It's like, if the drums already sound great, the bass player is then going to give a better performance because he's into it and he's liking the sounds of the drums, and it sounds good in his headphones, and he can hear the kick drum and he can hear the snare, So it's all like kind of, it's like building blocks, and if you screw up one of them, it's going to affect everything from there on out. And that's kind of my view of the recording process.
That's awesome. I just learned so much.
Oh, good.
So when it comes to recording bands, who would you say your biggest influences are? Like producer
Oh,
wise.
like producers and engineers?
Yeah.
So I think the biggest one would be, the obvious choice would be my mentor, who's Jay Moss of Defeater. Dude knows what he's talking about. He's extremely talented, extremely knowledgeable, and he has like a just some like workflow stuff and some systems in place that he taught me that are just extremely beneficial. So yeah, I studied under him for whatever, like 9 months or a year or something. It was like a remote thing during the pandemic. We were just hanging out like this on Zoom and talking about mixes, and he sent lessons and he'd critique my stuff, and so that was really great. So I would say Jay's probably like the number one, but as far as people, just because he's actually taught me, but other people, it's like, of course I love Steve Albini, Kurt Ballou of Converge. I think Kurt was one of the people that definitely inspired me to start the studio. I really like his sort of hybrid style of tooling his studio, like the way he picks his gear and the way he picks and chooses what is best from the analog world and best from the digital world to really make an awesome hybrid beast of a studio that can just do a lot. So I really appreciate Kurt's take on things. And then there's like, as far as mixers, I like Joe Barresi a lot. Evil Joe, he's the man. Jack Joseph Puig. I think Jack Joseph Puig might be the most detail oriented guy in the game. He's out there telling you to put a book of matches under your floor tom leg so that there won't be phasing issues caused by the resonance of the bottom head and the floor. So like he's like, oh, tilt it a little off. Always tilt your floor tom because that way there can't be phase cancellation because it's not a 90-degree angle between the floor and the resonant head of the drum. So it's like, holy shit, that's attention to detail. This guy's putting matchbooks under his floor tom legs. Like that's the stuff that, like I strive to hopefully get to that level where those kind of details truly matter because again, it's all foundational. It all builds on itself. Putting matchsticks under your floor tom leg does not matter if you don't know what phase coherency is and you're not using matching cables and you're not using matching channels when you're multi-miking stuff, So that's, guys like that I really look up to.
That's really cool, man. So now I'm gonna ask you some non-music questions. It's a good way for me to get to know you. I did this with the other producers and bands and artists I interviewed. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, totally.
All right, first one, favorite movie.
Oh, favorite movie. Oh man. Probably Interstellar.
Oh, that's a really good one.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. I mean, soundtrack's amazing. The underlying message is really cool, and the just sort of the exploration of like infinity and like living in crazy land where anything is possible, sort of thing, And like again, the soundtrack, Hans Zimmer. Wow, what a
The
soundtrack!
soundtrack is unbelievable.
It's
Like I think the
absolutely unbelievable.
storyline's awesome. The soundtrack is
Yeah.
unbelievable, and just like the cinematography is just like absolutely like
Cinematography is
breathtaking.
great. All the practical effects are great. He's going in, and so I'm a film guy too. I work in the film industry. I shoot for like network TV shows and ESPN broadcasts and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, like you can't like they did the spaceship flying into the black hole. That's just a model in a dark room, and they're shooting Roman candles at it with a fan blowing on it. It's amazing, and then just the writing, the writing and the attention to detail with the science. Most of the stuff like depicted in that movie, it's like 100% or as close as we understand to being like totally accurate. They had a physicist on staff as part of the writing team of that movie.
I
They
did
had
not
an
know that. That's
MIT
crazy.
physicist. Yeah, like that's again attention to detail. We got matchsticks under the floor tom leg, and we're hiring astrophysicists to write a movie. Like that's amazing.
My mind just blown.
Yeah, it's great. So yeah, Interstellar without a doubt.
No, heck yeah, man. What's your favorite sports team?
Favorite sports team, man. I don't really watch a lot of sports.
If you have to pick one.
I the Red Wings, of course. Grew up on hockey. We'll never forget when Detroit beat the crap out of the Colorado Avalanche. An iconic moment in hockey history. And I grew up. It was great. We grew up in Detroit in the '90s. Like we got the winningest team in sports history here. Like it was
Their team
awesome.
was stacked back in the day.
Oh, super stacked. I mean, we had how many Hall of Famers came out of that club? Like especially goaltenders,
Right.
Mike Vernon, Chris Osgood, and I played hockey when I was younger, so I love the goalies, Dominic Hasek, favorite player of all time for sure.
Stevie
Just
Y.
Stevie Y, yeah, can't forget about him. Lidstrom, the perfect human, they named a street after him recently, which is cool. So yeah, for sure the Detroit Red Wings.
Heck yeah. If you were stranded on a desert island, what three items would you want to have with you?
Uh well, let's see. A good knife, fire starting kit, and like 50 feet of rope. I think that's the most practical.
Pretty useful.
Yeah.
So if you had a
Otherwise,
million,
if I'm totally screwed, just give me a case of rum.
yeah, can't really go wrong with that. So if you had $1 million and you could donate it to any charity, which one?
Oh, probably food not bombs, because I know they're actually out there doing stuff, and I can trust that they'll spend the money appropriately.
Trying to make a difference in the world.
Yeah. Yep. something where I can where anything where I know the money is going to get spent on actual good deeds getting done and not fueling some kind of multi-level bureaucracy, you know.
If you go back in time and talk to one world leader or person of influence, who would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one, man. Um, World leader or person of influence. Let's just stick with world leader because it's like otherwise you could get into musicians and movie stars, and that's not really. Um,
I mean, dead musicians do count.
Dead musicians do count. Okay, I'm trying to think of like who, you know, maybe Einstein, maybe Winston Churchill, um, or what was that guy? No, was it Wallace? I believe Henry Wallace. He was
William Wallace from
no,
Scotland.
not William Wallace. That's also a good one. I bet he would have a lot to do. No, Henry Wallace, I believe is his name. He was a presidential candidate that I believe he ran against Truman. And I believe he had been FDR's vice president at some point, or was supposed to be, and got screwed out of it. But anyway, he was like the Bernie Sanders of the 1930s, 40s era politics. And much like Bernie Sanders, he got totally screwed out of everything. And you know, his name was constantly being dragged through the mud, and you know, but he was actually a really good guy trying to do a lot at that time. So he would be an interesting person to talk to.
All right, last question. What are some places in Detroit that visitors should check out?
Oh. Let's see. I mean, venues we got the Sanctuary, L Club, Gatekeepers Games up in Berkeley. There's a massive DIY presence in Detroit. There's Southwest Voodoo House. There's the Pleasant Underground, which is kind of a roaming thing, plus a house. There's Crow Manor, Homebum Manor, the Trumbleplex, and that's all. This is all just music stuff. Restaurants, I mean, you got to go to Lafayette County where they invented the Coney dog. Um, there's all kinds of good breweries and stuff here to check out. Detroit has really like it's changing, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. The gentrification word comes up a lot, but I like to think that Detroit's headed in a good direction. And like Eastern Market, that's probably one of the coolest things we have here. It at one point it was like the largest open air market in the country, um, and it's really awesome. It's got these huge sheds, like these big halls. They set up all kinds of stuff in there every weekend, and then they'll have like once a year they'll have like Flower Day where they just all the flower farmers from the Midwest basically bring in all kinds of stuff and sell it.
That's
It's crazy.
different.
It's like a whole neighborhood. It's like I don't know, it's probably 8-10 square blocks. It's large. I mean, there's a bunch of restaurants and bars and shops bordering it. There's like a spice company, like an old Italian style wine shop. Really great pizza down there at Supino's. So yeah, if you're coming to Detroit, you want to see like you got time to see like one thing, just go to the Eastern Market, get lunch, and walk around on a Saturday.
Well, you'll have to take me to all those places when I get out there again.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. I
Back
love
for
doing the
round
Detroit
two.
Sherpa thing. It's great.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting it up a little bit, man. And the support means a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me know when you're coming through here on tour or whatever, and I'll try to hook you up.
Really appreciate that. And so, for the people that are going to watch this interview later, where can they find your recording studio at?
So iodetroit.com. And it's IO like input output. Tried to make it just real easy to remember. I'm IO Detroit Studio on Instagram. And I'm easily findable on Facebook, Patrick Sheufelt. So yeah, get a hold of me or one of my brothers. They help me run the studio. They play in a band called Gator Pit. So hit us up. Any of our projects, we're always down to play. We're always down to tour, and always looking for new people to work with here at the studio. So
Do what the man says.
there we go.
All right, my man. Well, I hope hopefully you have a great night, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds good, buddy. Thank you.
Of course. See ya.
Cheers.